Thank you all so much for joining us. Discussions with the Fascia Masters with Chris Stoner, our very special guest. My name is Deanna Hansen. I'm a certified athletic therapist and the founder of Fluid Isometrics and Block Therapy. And we're also being joined by Quinn Castellane, the VP of Block Therapy and the lead block therapist. So I met Chris, I believe, about a year and a half ago. We had an amazing first call. And since then, she is absolutely blowing my mind with the work that she's doing. She's already a certified instructor and working through the therapist program and has so many exciting things to share. So Chris, take it away and share your story with us.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I want to begin with when I first came across a bonus video in one of my trainings with David Avocado Wolf, and it said something about the fascia. And I'm like, oh, I don't need anything to do with that. I don't do anything with the fascia, so I bypassed it. And I know how both of you are all about the intuition. You know, you get this hit like, you're really supposed to go look at that. And 3 times my body kept saying, you need to go watch that video. And I'll never forget, it was on a Saturday. And I finally went back. I'm like, fine. So I went back and looked at it, and I watched it. And I spent that whole Saturday, I watched every YouTube video. And I literally sent Deanna a message that day. And I said, I want to incorporate block therapy into my coaching program. Because it felt like it was that other part of that missing piece to the puzzle that I was looking for. Because I was already working with the state of mind and the physical and the nutrition and the movement. But as we get older, we slow down. And so I'm all about that active aging. And I can literally feel within myself an unraveling to where I used to feel heavy and dense. And I just wasn't getting out of bed quite as quick, because I've always been into working out. The recovery was just taking much longer. And I didn't even know anything about the fascia until I came across that bonus video in my training. And now I have more of a buoyancy to me. And the thing that I noticed, that I was looking at before, so like take years back. So I'm going to take you back to my beginning part of my story. So for 15 years, probably when I was right around 34, 35, I started going to the doctor, and I was having a lot of digestive issues. And they always wanted to put me on, and I honestly can't even tell you the name of the prescription. I just remember one being a purple pill, maybe it's Nexium or something, but it was to help with the digestive issues. I had a lot of acid reflux, and I refused to take it, because even before I was a health coach, I knew once I started taking prescriptions like that, I would never know what's going on in my body. And that's a big, huge part of my message, is learn to listen and trust your own body and not silence what's going on with it, because those are invitations that the body's sending us to take a look at. And even back then, I knew that before I even had the training. So by the time 15 years later, I was barely weighing 100 pounds. I was wearing size 14 girl pants. I could not put on weight. And I would cry every time. See, I'm going to tear up now. I would cry every time because it was so painful to eat. My body was not able to break down the food. So they always say, you are what you eat. You are what you assimilate, what you break down and are able to absorb. And then when my dad was also dying of cancer at the exact same time. And so that elevated my emotions. I was trying to find anything holistic to help with my own health. And at the same time, I was trying to find anything to help Dad. And the stress of that just amplified and sped up my illness that was going on. And then, after 7 years, Dad did pass away from the cancer. And he'd been gone maybe 5 months. And I was still on the internet searching for something to help relieve my symptoms. Because Dr. Tomchek had finally told me, he's like, Chris, if we don't get you to take something, you're going to get esophagus cancer, you're going to have stomach cancer, you are headed very closely to a disease state. He said, you're already there, but you're going to have cancer or some sort of a disease. And I said, I understand that, but I also know well enough taking that pill is not going to fix it. I want to get to the root cause of it and bring it up from there. So I was on the internet, and you know how it goes when you get on Google, then you think you have all these 10,000 different things, and I wasn't really gaining anywhere on that pathway either, but I was on a website, and there was an ad that said, would you like to become a health coach? And I was like, what the heck is a health coach? I'd never even heard of it. So I clicked on it, and as soon as I clicked on it, I was like, boom. It was like a lightning bolt. God was just like, this is your calling. This is what you're meant to do. I signed up for functional diagnostic nutrition and Institute of Integrative Nutrition that day. And in that year, I brought my own health back. And that was 3 years ago, and I have been doing continual training since then. And in IIN, David Avocado Wolf was one of our teachers. And I really I loved his message about going more raw, because I know that the food has more enzymes in it. So I've always kind of followed him. And it was in his training, one of his bonus trainings with him and Lars, that I come across your bonus training that you had in there with Lars and David Avocado Wolf. But the big part of this whole journey was I had been brutally raped when I was 9. I knew it had messed with me a little bit mentally. But what I didn't know until I literally went into IIN was the correlation that my state of my mind was having on my physiology body. And we all hold our emotions and our stress differently for each person. Mine was in my digestive system. And I can still feel if I'm ramped up or I'm revved up or I'm going through something stressful, instead of allowing it to just to flow right through me, which is how we're designed to do. If I hold on to that instead of just allowing the energy just to flow through, I can feel that knot in my stomach building up there, and that's where I can always feel mine at. But that is, I see it all the time. And the more I started working with clients when I was a health coach, at the bottom of every coaching session, in the middle of it, I could see it was something emotional. So they would come to me for something physical, which is like I was doing to my doctor. I was going to him for something physical. But the cause of it was I was literally, so like say A was my rape, because I had vowed never to be vulnerable like that again. So I shut a part of myself off. So in order to maintain that, I had to keep a certain state of mind. So what I was doing here is I was then literally feeling that in my body, and I was shutting off parts of my body, which was my digestive system, and then I was not able to break down and assimilate and absorb the food. So if anybody is out there and you can relate to this, the thoughts that we have, what we're thinking, if they're meant to just flow through us, but if we hold on to it, what we think, we will feel. And then this is what I would do. And then when I would realize this, I would be like, okay, well, now I need to control my thoughts. You know, because that's where then I went to the mindfulness, not everybody does this, but on this mindfulness, then I would think, oh, well, now I need to control my thoughts. I need to think good thoughts, think good thoughts, think good thoughts. Well, that created a whole nother bubble of concentrating, oh, I can only have good thoughts, because now I know what it does to me physically. Well, that would create so much stress that it was having a backlash doing it that way. And then I realized that at the core, universal, We are all functionally built the exact same way as far as our state of mind. We all are built with an energy of the universe. We have our mind, our consciousness, and our thoughts. And when I realized that they're all just meant to flow through me. So if you give something 3 minutes, it's gone. It'll flow right on through you. Where we make the mistakes is it's not a mistake. We just innocently don't know. Like, we're taught in school how to be physically fit, but nobody teaches us how to be mentally fit, how to be emotionally fit. And what does that actually look like? And for me, when I had the understanding, it was like liberating and freedom, because I no longer had to have all these controls. Like, truly, I sit back and look at it now, and I'm having a squirrel moment, but it's popping in there, so I'm going to say it. So, like, the whole thing, everybody's talking about, oh, well, embrace vulnerable. Be vulnerable, be vulnerable. And I jumped on that bandwagon. When did being ourselves become vulnerable? Being ourselves is freedom. It's not vulnerable. To tell somebody to even attach the word vulnerable to being ourselves, for me now, gives me a negative connotation to it. Being myself and being vulnerable, I almost let a cuss word slip there. I'm like, bring it on. Now I'm like, yes. Now I realize to live full out helps people see what is healthy. So, like, I used to think healthy was like what you would do, Gwen. We would all go, and it was all about the sports. We know, how do we look out here? You know, I never gave a thought that healthy was an internal thing and that comes out. So now, to live full out living, it's about embracing who we truly are, but it's coming from the inside out, where before I was living from the outside in. And that's where block therapy became a missing piece to the puzzle, because as we go through it, when I'm right with you on, when you consciously seek out that pain at a deeper level, and you're able to break this pain-fear cycle, because now you're switching the perception on what pain actually is. That is magical. It is amazing. And so there's this misconception on what actually health and happiness is. And so, like, I'm on a mission to go out and help people understand that being healthy, one, you can't be healthy without being happy. And you can't be happy without being healthy. Well, you can, because it's still, that would tie to the circumstance. But to be fully vibrant and live life full out, for me, is to have, this is probably going to shock you guys, is to have complete freedom and vibrancy and vigor from the bedroom to the boardroom. You know, to where I can go hike the mountains, and I can play with my grandkids, and I can run, I can walk. I want to be able to age to where I can still be moving and grooving and dancing and whatever it is that I want to do in that moment. I want my body to be able to match what my visions are for my life. And so this is a question I ask people all the time. Is your body, so like, get real clear on your visions. What do you want? Because most of us know what we don't want, but very few people know what they do want. And when you get real clear on what you do want, and the reason, and I was that way, the reason I didn't know what I wanted was I was so afraid to really speak it and want to own it, because if I didn't reach it, then I looked like a failure. So like, one of my clients, Ron, who I just love dearly, but he is very high in jiu-jitsu. He's a very high functioning coach, business coach. He does jiu-jitsu, he does hikes, I mean, like long mile hikes, longer than I even go. But he was noticing his body was not able to keep withstanding the level that he was wanting to keep performing at. And that level is different for everybody. So like when I listened to, even with you, Quinn, there was your level of going to the gym, working out, you had a higher level because you were competing than some of the people that were just wanting to just stay fit. And so there's that different level. What I find that block therapy does is it brings you up to that level so that you can perform it in the proper alignment. And also where I come in, because I also work on the state of mind, the nutrition, and on the connections in our relationship and how everything connects together so that they get the full spectrum. And just after, because I know when Ron first bought the block, we weren't even working together. And he's like, Chris, I just don't see where that's going to fit into my life. So I was at his house in November and for an intensive training for my business. And he's like, so Chris, what do you want out of this weekend? Am I allowed to say one cuss word? I better not. But I'll just, and I said, to get your A on that block. I said, because when you fully get on it, then and I guide you through it, you're really going to see how to help me. And he could not get over the difference. And so when I come home, then we got together on Zoom. And I would guide him. I think the very first class I put him through, seriously, was all things psoas. That's my favorite. Anything psoas is my favorite. And I don't remember, there was like 3 classes that we had done. And the more we kept doing it, the more he was just like, man, Chris, I can't get over the difference that I feel. And even this is the one thing too. And I don't know if you two have experienced this. Like you'll have some mental blockages, like you're all up in your mind and you're trying to figure something out for your business or your personal life. And you'll get on that block, or a little bit later, it's like, boom, it's right there. Because we're opening up those channels. Ron had told me, he's just like, man, there's things I couldn't figure out about my business. And then all of a sudden we'll be on the block, or later on that day, it's like, boom, it's right there. But this was the biggest thing that Ron had said to me that I literally teared up when he told me. He's like, and he never told me what the dream was. He said, I've always had a dream of doing something. He said, but I think he said it was like 2 or 3 years ago, he just kind of gave up on the dream. He said, because I know my body would never have been able to withstand what I wanted it to do. He said, I have a woodpecker on my roof going, and he says, just out of the blue the other day, there it was. It popped right into my mind. He said, I haven't thought about that dream for a long time. And all of a sudden I was just like, I think my body could actually do it now. He said, now, Chris, whether I actually do it or not, I don't know. He said, but the fact that I believe my body would be able to withstand it now is something that I didn't have before. And that's what I love about, because I did a podcast interview on Friday, and Dermot was just absolutely in love with the fact that I call it active aging. Because, I'm 54, and I know, Deanna, you're close to my age, I think, and Dermot was 50, because he was saying, Chris, I'm highly active, but I just noticed there's things that I'm not able to do like I used to be able to do. And I said, let me get you on the block, and you'll have those back. Yeah. But that's my story.
Thank you so much, Chris, for being so open to sharing your experiences. And I just loved in the beginning when you talked about the buoyancy, because that's really what it comes down to. Pain, fear, and stress are what cause us to reactively hold the breath. And without the breath, our cells become heavy and dense, so we don't have that lightness to us. So whether it's a traumatic event, a function of gravity compressing us over time, injury or surgery that gets impacted into the body, causing that added density, and then the way gravity will torque us, what it's ultimately doing is it's pulling us down and twisting us and creating that heaviness. And if you think about where the diaphragm is situated, right at the base of the rib cage, right to the underneath it on the left is the stomach organ. And I know there's a lot of talk right now that leaky gut syndrome is the basis for basically all disease. That's what I've been hearing lately. And if you think about this stomach organ, when it becomes dry and under pressure, cracks happen.
Mhm.
So to me, I mean, in a very simplified way of explaining it, that's why we have leaky gut, because this organ that should be soft and fluid and warm becomes dry and frozen and old, and it cracks and it doesn't work. So then we can't absorb, digest, do all of those things that we need to give our cells exactly what they require to function. And I love how you continue to refer to yourself. It's, you know, where we really are living as a function of our cells, and our self is simply the macro version of all of our cells. And if we take the time and really consider those cells and what they require to function optimally, first and foremost, it's oxygen. So when we can really pull that breath in and move the negative out, we allow those cells to stay buoyant, and we can even reverse time, because we can pull out the old stuck energy, the negative scar tissue, those adhesions that develop, and create blood flow and buoyancy by breathing life back into those cells. And we can absolutely age actively and really change the way that aging is considered today. I always get excited when I'm talking to people in our community, because how old will we live? None of us know, because we're at the forefront of, you know, using the system and changing the way that we perceive our bodies to be, and changing the process that we use to continue to be healthy as we age. And the lovely thing is, it's a beautiful complement to anything else that you're doing. So whether you're an athlete, or nutrition is the complement, or you're doing all of it, this works with everything, because all it's really doing is connecting you to your deeper self. And for me, when you said, what is it that we really want? First and foremost, I want peace within, because it doesn't matter what we have materially. If we are feeling unsettled inside, nothing feels valuable or great in life, because it's that internal state of being that is so incredibly potent in how we live our daily life. And if it's full of acid and chaos and confusion, it doesn't matter anything else, how we look, what we have. If we feel that way inside, we're not enjoying things. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure Quinn has a ton to say, and I'm sure there's a lot of people also that have comments or questions.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, well, first of all, Chris, that was, wow, you said a lot. And that is such an incredible story. I seriously had had no idea. And there's many things I can definitely relate with. But first of all, I'm just going to look at some of the questions and the comments. Actually, this one lady said, so much familiar territory. So I think a lot of people are relating to your story, because like there's so much that you said, and there's so much that like even the block does bring you to an area of where you need to be. And I know that kind of sounds a little vague, but even for me, being in the gym or being a bodybuilder, your body can't keep up with the longevity of it, especially if you're going at that high caliber. And to be able to find a solution that is a fascia decompression, which really is the answer to so many issues in the body, then you can really get to where you need to be, but also find, is that even really the point of what I need to be doing? Like for me, I realized I don't need to be a high caliber athlete in the term of bodybuilding. I like experimenting. Like I know you mentioned Ron, he's into like jujitsu, and I'm starting to experiment in different things, because the ego gets so strongly attached to looking a certain way. And that's something was such a struggle for me to release and let go. And it still is a struggle. Like there's times where I can see myself like looking in the mirror, getting a little smaller, or I'm not lifting the same amount of weight or not the same amount of repetitions. And it can start to eat you alive. And I don't think people really understand that until, it's something that I think so many people are struggling with. And that's why people don't really let it go. And if they do let it go, then they can spiral into something pretty negative. And it's similar with professional athletes even. Like if you're an NFL player and you've been playing at this high caliber your entire life, you win the Super Bowl, and then the Super Bowl is done and you're done football. It's like, now what? So I think what block therapy can do is it's a bridge for so many possibilities. So for me, I will never regret bodybuilding. I loved it. I learned so much. The biggest thing I learned from bodybuilding was the mental component and how to be mentally strong in certain ways. And there's still a different spectrum to that, because that whole ego is a mental issue, I think, for sure. Because like, as I mentioned, I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure that out. And when you have a name put on a physical body, it's really hard to change your name or to change your physical body, because people know me as Quinn the bodybuilder. Oh, I want to look like Quinn. And then as soon as I start to want to look a certain way or do something different because my interests change, it's really hard to do that, because you don't know how you're going to be judged. And maybe people don't even care. That's the crazy thing, but that's what's going in my head. And I know that's what's going in a lot of people's minds as well, especially in bodybuilding. And some people won't quit bodybuilding. They will literally get to the point where they will work so hard until their joints grind out, until they're so, like, they will die a bodybuilder. And I do think, to an extent, and with all due respect to all bodybuilders out there, I think that is an issue, and that's something that can be resolved. And that doesn't mean you have to stop bodybuilding. It's just take care of yourself. Start listening to what's really going on inside, because you might think you're just building muscle and looking a certain way, and that whole idea of health is, if you look good, you're healthy. And I think that's people are still really thinking that that's the truth. It's nutrition and exercise. And don't get me wrong, those are components, but exercise can totally ruin your body if you're doing it incorrectly. And who knows what you're doing? Like what I was doing in the gym, I was ruining my body. Then I figured out, so I stepped away from bodybuilding for years and years and years. Then I came back to it because I found a solution, and that was implementing block into the gym, but also changing my training style. So I think it's a journey for everyone to discover on their own, because if you find block therapy, if you're listening to this podcast, give it a shot. Because again, I hate always saying that, because I don't want to sound salesy on this, but it's what will seriously change you. And every journey is different, and it is starting from the inside out. So a lot of people want to see that immediate result, and some people will. Some people will see a change really, really quick in their body, but for people who have been struggling for a long time, it can take time to start changing your cellular function and how that connects with your brain, and starting to treat yourself correctly and to respect yourself. So that's something that I've learned a lot, and I'm finding that balance. And I think everybody's just pretty well is going to figure it out on their own with the guidance of us. So we can bring them to the block, but they're the one who's really going to be the one making that decision to change. I could keep rambling on this, but I'll stop there.
Well, I would say, yeah, so like when I had started flipping mine, when I went and had tests done, I thought for sure I had, even FDN thought for sure I had leaky gut. Mine was a big, just E. coli and candida overgrowth. And I was at a very, very bottom stages of adrenal fatigue. And so I'm doing and this, I want to tap into what you had just said, because this is what I was saying earlier, just whole misconception of what healthy is. So I was doing all these beach body workouts. I was doing, what's the one with Shaun T?
I'm not sure.
Anyways, it's the high intensity workouts, and I was doing Tony or Horton's, PNAXs and all those.
Yeah.
And then when I got my test, part of my diagnostic was I was only allowed, because I was at the very, very bottom of stage 3. There is no stage 4. I was allowed to walk and do yoga. You guys, seriously, it took me months, because my ego got in the way that I felt. I was telling myself this story. What kind of workout is this? I can walk, I can do yoga. I could walk, I could do yoga. For the first month and a half, 2 months, I was so freaking bored because I was wanting something more fast paced. But here what I didn't realize was because my body was already at that lower level and I was very sick, and everybody kept saying, God, Chris, you look fantastic, you know. They all thought I was healthy. I knew internally I was not healthy. And I thought the better I kept eating, the more I kept working out, it would fix it. There was no amount of food that was going to fix that because I hadn't worked on the state of mind. But by doing those workouts, I was actually sliding my body further down the chute into illness because I was robbing it of the energy that it was needing to heal myself. And so healthy, I may have looked fit on the outside, but internally, that internal fatness, that visceral fat, even though I didn't have any, but that is, what do they call it? Anyways, I was an unhealthy, skinny person. And I looked very fit and muscular on the outside. Now, I will tell you that I'm not near as muscular as I was then, but I know I'm healthier now than I was then. And I'm even coming back from all the symptoms of Corona, and I'm still healthier now than I was then.
You raised such a good point, because that's something I just realized as well. And I think a lot of people need to take this into consideration with the balance of how much should you actually be intensely working out or training really hard, because that's the whole concept of bringing your body back into that sympathetic state. And when you're in that sympathetic state, you're in that fight or flight mode. And that's where literally your body is pushing all the blood to your muscles and away from your organs. So if you're always working out all the time and you're always in that sympathetic state, then it's really challenging for your body to heal, especially if you have a condition or an issue or a compromised immune system even. So that's something I've learned a lot within even just the past year. This is a newer concept for me because I'm so sympathetic, and I realize that I am not healthy at all when it comes to that. Well, of course, block, I was able to calm down and bring me more to that parasympathetic state. But that's something people don't really understand. And it's a little frightening because the trend right now is fitness, and all on social media, all on Instagram, it's all about these fit guys, these fit girls just saying like, oh, go to the gym 5-7 days a week, work out really hard, push through the pain, push through the pain. There's a time and a place to do that. If you need to do that, sure, but don't expect that to be a lifetime longevity thing you need to do to maintain health and wellness. That's a big misconception. And you have to give your body the time to heal. When you're in that parasympathetic state, that's when your body starts to, of course, calm down. Your nervous system starts to change. Your organs can start to heal. The blood starts pushing more to the organs, and your body is going in that deep state of healing. So by getting on the block, you nearly immediately connect to that parasympathetic state. So that's why I love saying, hey, if you're brand new to block therapy, do it first thing in the morning, because you're going to start your day off right. And hey, if you don't like doing that, that's fine. Do it right before you go to bed. You're going to have a beautiful sleep. So it's finding that balance again with each individual, and making sure that you're giving your body what it needs. It needs that rest. It needs to heal. And if you're always training and working out, and I used to be like that completely, I'm a completely different person inside and out now.
Well, and I think it comes down to that. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Well, for me, I was just getting ready to say, I think a lot of it, and another big part of my message, and you guys, even the fact that you say block therapy was a missing piece to self-care, is to learn to be self-reliant. So like, if my clients come to me all the time to ask me questions, or I even seen Rai was doing this before, it was because I wasn't listening to my own body and I wasn't trusting what it was telling me. So the more that we can, so that's the one thing that I learned, to be a student of my own body. When I'm on the block and I'm like, or just being more self-aware in my thinking, and I know that if I just allow it to go through me, I'm not still saying I don't have my anger moments. I had one a couple weeks ago where I was literally, I think, with the nurse at the doctor's office. I told you about this, Deanna. I did not stay professional and polite with her. But to be self-reliant and learn to listen and trust your own body and become a student of your own body, you take back the power that we have been raised to give to an outside authority outside of ourselves, like they know better and more than what we do for ourselves. And if anybody of you can just learn, that are listening to this, listen and trust your own body and become more self-reliant, because you're going to grab back that own power. Our health system teaches us to trust the doctors, and there's a place for doctors. I'm not anti-doctors or otherwise, but it's not meant to be for preventative care. It's not meant to be for daily care. You can do all that yourself, and your body is sending you the invitations, whether it's in form of allergies. For my case, it was allergies, acne, digestive problems. I had so many invitations that started out as a whisper within my body that turned into these screams because I was ignoring the whispers because I kept going to the doctors. You know, if you're going to look for somebody to guide you, find somebody who's going to guide you, to teach you to listen to your own body and to learn to listen to your own intuition, because that's where the magic happens. That's where the answers lie.
And I think what people need to understand as well is that as we age, we compress the layer after layer. So what we feel and see right now on the surface is different than when we start to dive in through those layers and we begin to uncover physical pains, emotional struggles, memories from events from the past. I mean, I remember, and it's so funny because I was literally 12 years old. I remember that I had a crush on this boy. And I had a nice friend group where I lived, both boys and girls. And I didn't think that this boy had any feelings back. So I actually said to my male friend, "Do you think I'm too fat for this guy to like me?" And his response, and I was saying that actually not thinking that I was, but I was needing the compliment, right? And he actually said, "Well, maybe." That impacted me. And to this day, I remember the exact feeling about that. And it's interesting because that was like right around when I was hitting puberty, and I lost control of like the body that I knew as a child, as a kid. And suddenly I'm going through all of these hormonal things. And I mean, I was just feeling completely out of control. And that led me into an eating disorder, to the point where I was starving myself. And it is so interesting what people view as a pleasing appearance, because I remember I was probably living for a few months on hundreds of calories a day. And I was so proud of the fact that I could starve myself, and people were complimenting me, saying how great I looked. And it got to the point with that eating disorder where I couldn't maintain that starvation any longer. So it shifted to starving and binging. And for a while that worked. And then over time, even during the starvation 3 to 4 days, I wasn't changing. And then so the binging would just keep increasing the weight. So I kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the feelings of like betrayal, you know, my own self, like the betrayal that my body was doing this. How can I be not eating for 3 or 4 days and not getting any smaller? So it is so interesting how that sculpts the way that we think about ourselves and the choices and the behaviors. And when we start diving into these layers with the block, I think something that people are afraid of as well as going back to those moments in time when they were afraid or felt ashamed or embarrassed or guilty because they feel that perhaps they're going to have to face that and live it all over again. And it's not like that. It is such a beautiful non-judgmental tool, because you dive in and you may have a memory, but then you let it go and then you move to the next layer. So, it's kind of like we're on this road going backward through time in our experiences in our life, but we're passing them by. It's not like we're stopping and saying, oh, I'm going to live in guilt for a while over here. We feel it, we let it go, we exhale it out, and then we move on to the next layer and we dive deeper to those cells. And those cells that have been pushed to the side far into the corner of the closet have a different message because they were compressed from a different moment in time, from a different experience. So as we go through this process and we become more buoyant and lighter in our physical body, we become lighter in our thinking, we become lighter with how we respond in the moment to stresses in life. Not that we don't. I mean, we're all human, and we're all going to have moments of feeling ugly and crappy, and we're going to not be our best. We're going to lash out when we shouldn't, and all of those things. But that's just being human, and we have to also be able to forgive ourselves for that. But that's another thing that the block does, is it allows us to move into those places where we just feel shitty about ourselves, and we stay with that. We feed it love and we feed it life, and then we move to the next layer. So it's a continuous journey, but each step you take, you're moving in that opposite direction from which you were going, where gravity was pulling you down and making you heavier and making your thoughts more repetitive, because you're unable to see a moment in time as a unique, beautiful experience when you're caught in that compression, because you might be in the most beautiful space with no external stress, but something inside gets triggered, that acid in the gut. That's me too. You and I are very similar in that, where that's where I go when I feel yucky and ugly. And I remember too, when I was working with Edna in Puerto Rico, she did this beautiful hypnosis on me. And she made me identify my ugly self. And, it was like to actually put a name on it so that I could objectify it and I could then speak to it and get rid of it. And for me, it's sourpuss, because that's how I feel inside. Like I feel sour and then I want to retreat just like a cat. So, so to be able to, and then when I feel that, I think of sourpuss and it makes me laugh. So it's cool because now I'm restructuring and changing that way that and you don't like that feeling because you feel yucky. And then you feel that everybody sees you in that exact same way. It's funny too, because you can even look in the mirror some days and to the external person, you don't look any different. But one day you might feel, oh my gosh, I feel so light and awesome. And then another day you might feel bloated and you think that the world sees you as this individual that's all bloated, but yet nobody sees it. It's how you're feeling inside yourself. So the nice thing about the block is that it really does take you through those moments, and it allows you to say goodbye to those layers that have built up over time and bring light into those cells so that we can forgive and we can find some joy and fun and health. And that's what it's all about.
Well, I remember when I started blocking, intuitive, like my body just kept wanting me to focus. I knew I needed to focus up and through here. But my body, my mind was telling me up in here, but my body kept telling me to block on my lower abdomen and my pelvic. My lower abdomen, and I was spending a lot of time. The only two places, I went belly, then lower belly, and then, that was just it for I finally, after 2 weeks, and I remember contacting you, I had to stop. I was having nightmares that were so vivid. And I truly believe, and I know, that from that moment, because it's really weird, is we all have this innate ability to withstand some pretty traumatic things. You hear some of the things that soldiers go through, or rape victims, or spousal abuse. It doesn't matter, even verbal. But when I was in that moment, I remember disconnecting myself. It's like I was there, but yet I wasn't there. And then when it came to the time when they were all done doing their business, then they stood there for, I bet, what seemed like forever. But for them, they kept trying to decide whether they should kill me or not, or let me live, or kill me or let me live. And I was 9, and I remember looking at I was in an older house. So I don't know if you guys have this up in Canada, where the windows go clear to the floor. So it's a very tall window. Well, I remember I always loved Dukes and Hazzards and all these shows where they go, people busting through the glass. And I remember as they're talking about it, whether to let me live or die, because, I've seen their face. could I jump through that glass? You know, I really, because I was fast. If I took off quick enough, would I be able to have enough quickness built up enough to bust through that glass? And the only thing that stopped me from even attempting it was I thought, even if I do bust through, look at all the scars. How bad could it scar my face? I was more concerned about the external scars and how I would look externally than dying, truly. Because that was what come to my forefront. Oh my God, I think I probably could because I'm very quick. But man, if I make it through that, how bad is that glass when it busts? It's going to cut my face up or the rest of my body. And I didn't want people to look at me like I was a monster because I had scars all over my body. At 9 years old, I thought of all this.
Wow.
And so when I was blocking all of that area, I know it was just those suppressed emotions, literally, because I've had anger emotions come through when I'm doing the liver on the right rib, but I have not had anything like when I'm blocking the pelvic area and the lower abdomen area. And I think that still, because like it was just those three, the abdomen, lower belly, and pelvic, those three areas combined for me is like, whew. And I mean, the nightmares were intense to where I didn't touch those areas. I only still do them sporadically because it's like I was going so fast that I could feel it spiraling me the other direction, that I was not getting any sleep. And that's our rest and recovery process. You know, that's our healing. That's where our body and the mental and emotional part heals. And that's what my body was doing. It was releasing that stuff, but I was doing it too much, too fast. And so now I just know just to go and do it. And then I'll have a bad dream. And so not every time, but if I do it back to back, I will have nightmares as it releases.
And that's where also
the answer.
Yeah. And that's where also undoing the whole body is such a key piece. It's like if we just keep going where those pain sites are, it's like you keep poking the bear rather than getting the whole body to let go of that layer so that you can move into the next layer, let go of that whole layer. And it is a journey. It's not something that you're going to do for 21 days. I mean, in 21 days, lots of change can happen, but I think what's so lovely about this process is when people start, for whatever reason that they do find that there's something really profound to this. And so many people write and say this has become their new addiction, which I just love to hear, because I mean, I have a very addictive personality, so I'm fully aware that we all have addictions, but really it comes down to habits, and we either have good habits or bad habits, and one is going to be driven differently and take us into different places than the other. So if we can start replacing, and I love too how, I mean, I remember when I was going through the whole concept of dieting, one of the best things people said to me is, don't go into changing your food from a perspective of elimination. Go into it from a perspective of adding. So instead of saying, I'm not going to eat any more sugar, I'm going to add in some good foods, and then just naturally those other negative things start to fall off because you're not hungry. You're getting satisfied in different ways. So it's such a nice thing to do, and a mindset with block where you don't have to start this process thinking I have to quit everything that I love. Just add this in, and then your body is going to guide you over time as to what isn't serving it anymore. Because as you continue to block and fill those spaces with oxygen and life, your body communicates differently, and that changes the way that you think and the way that you feel. So your behaviors ultimately change as a result. So that's just another nice component about this. And to make it simple for people to start, because simply starting is all that needs to happen. And then the block will take care of the rest.
That's a really good way of putting it. And because I remember you told me about that, Deanna, a long time ago, about the whole concept of adding something in rather than taking something out. Because that's really hard. That is really, really hard, especially if you're like attached to that or addicted to that. You adding something in is a brilliant idea. And I think that's where once you add in the block, and even if you start 5 minutes a day, 10, 15 minutes a day, you're soon going to realize that what is good for your body and what isn't good for your body. And some people will ignore it, and you might ignore it initially and you're like, no, like I can still do that. I know I can. Then you do it. And then you realize, no, there's something off there. And that was the battle, again, going back to bodybuilding, that I had. It was that constant, like, who's gonna win? Who's gonna win? Because I'm like, I can do this. I know I can. And I still can to an extent. I would have to block a lot, especially how insane I was in the gym. But yeah, I think that, again, just reinforcing how great of a way that is to approach block therapy. Because don't think that, oh, I'm going to have to stop this, I'm going to have to stop that, I can't do this anymore, I can't eat these foods anymore. It's like, keep doing exactly what you're doing. Everybody can find 15 minutes in a day, no matter what. Wake up 15 minutes early. Go to bed 15 minutes later. Probably better to wake up 15 minutes early, but and then you'll see how your body feels. Listen to your body. And I think some people are a little intimidated about that factor because they know there's a lot of hidden darkness within them, or they don't want to change. And you have to be open enough. This is bringing back in that concept of the mind, where you have to be open enough to receive change. Because if you're just closing it all up, you can do anything. You could take the best pill in the world, the best thing in the world, but if you don't believe it's going to work, it's not going to do anything. Same with the placebo effect. You could take a sugar pill, and the power of the mind can literally physically change your body. And yeah, I just think one step at a time, by adding something in, you're going to see that change. But again, just be open enough, just enough to be able to accept this new bodywork practice to see the change, because it is new. There's nothing out there like this, and it taps into a lot of layers. Go ahead.
I was just going to raise, when you said it's new, I find it revolutionary, liberating. Truly, I mean, I sent that to you, and I told you that, you guys, it is revolutionary. I love having people, whether it's with their state of mind, in a gentle way, but lean into their edges. And you would not believe how much I love using the edges on the block. And the buoyancy, so like if we didn't open up to allowing the emotions and the thought to flow through us, even with the block, I believe it would have some sort of limitation. But as you keep taking and doing it more and more, the body's natural ability to bring us back to homeostasis, you're not going to be able to fight it. So like, I know the first time I did the perineum, Quinn's over like, oh yes, my favorite spot. I get on that spot and I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you?
The reason I said that, because that used to be my least favorite position.
Mine too. I was just like, Quinn, what is wrong with you? But once again, it was in that area where, the rape, the penetration, and all that other stuff. Those areas have been my Achilles. That has been the most stressful part for me to go through. But I kept going back to it. And then, I would just, each time I would sit back a little bit more, sit back a little bit more, and sit back a little bit more. And I am telling you, as you just do it layer by layer by layer, now I can go all the way back and touch my hands on my feet, clear it and lean all the way back, and I can sit all the way up. But a year ago, you guys, I could barely even, I had to lean all the way and just kind of, like when I have somebody on the block, I can see if they're tensing, because I know it, I've done it. It's like you don't allow your body to fully sink in. And so I always ask them, when you're doing that on the block, where else are you doing that in your life? Because where we do it on the block, you're doing it somewhere else, whether it's in your relationships, it's in your career, it's in how you play, it's always going to be someplace else. But that perineum is the one that took me a long time to go layer by layer. And I thought every time Quinn would say, oh yeah, it's my favorite spot, I wanted to go.
And I felt it. I felt that slap. Oh, that's so
But
funny.
it's magical. I am telling you, the freedom that comes from it, if you just remember that you don't have to, and it comes back to what we say, it's that gentle persuasion. It's not about forcing. Everything that we're taught in society is just how fast can you get there? And it's about slowing way down. The slower you go, the quicker the results. The faster you will get there.
And that's the irony in all this.
Yeah.
Everything's an irony in all this almost.
I'm going to even iron out my fascia. Now we're mixing in some puns.
And fun. Well, Quinn, is there any other comments?
Just a lot of people loving the conversation. There's actually no questions right now. I think people are just blown away by your story.
Well, Chris, first of all, thank you so much for being so candid with your story and for all of your insights. These discussions are so helpful for people because each person's story ties in different parts and everybody's going to relate to something somewhere along the way to give people just more of that understanding about what this can do. Now, is there any last thoughts you would like to share with everybody who's listening?
So yeah, I did write this down in case I got sidetracked, so I will read what I wrote. Because I read this the other day and I was like, I absolutely love it, because what stops, I think, a lot of people is that pain when you first get on it. And so when you feel the pain, they go into the fear cycle of it. And so I put down, I love seeking out pain. I am more aware, more open when experiences are painful. So the more painful the experiences, the more I experience the moment. Does that make sense to you? And so when I lean into my edges and I breathe into that moment, I am pushing beyond my boundaries. And that is where freedom and magic happens, in that space.
Isn't that beautiful? Wow.
Wow.
I was just communicating with another person the other day and sharing how somebody said, who is your mentor in your life? And I didn't have a specific individual. To me, pain was my mentor. And she said, make sure you write that down. And you just explained that beautifully. So thank you so much.
Sure.
And again, I know Chris's links are going to be in the feed below here. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to want to be reaching out to you and connecting. So thank you again so much. And thank you so much, Quinn. I'm sure you have some last words as well before we say goodbye.
Yeah, there's just more people commenting saying, like, I sincerely appreciate you sharing your story. That was beautiful. I really know nothing about the block, but I can resonate with what Chris says about that she wants to know more. That's very beautiful, Chris. A lot of comments are coming in right now, and
reach out to me, like I said. And yeah, for me, the big part was in my healing thing was, and I find it the gateway to everything, and that's the state of the mind. Because when you change it, when you actually understand it, how we all function, to me, I find the process on the block magnified to where it just happens much quicker, because you don't have that battle going back and forth.
100%. And just one last comment here. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your willingness to share your story, and I'm inspired by how you help others heal. We are lucky to have had this time with you today. So
love
Chris,
you all.
Oh, love you, Chris. Thank you so much. That was just such an incredible story. Just to listen to all of this has been so amazing. And I know so many people resonated with your story and can relate with your story. I can relate with your story. And I'm sure this discussion could go on for 5 hours for sure. So we're going to have you back on.
Okay. I look forward to it. If any of you want to reach out and connect, let's connect. I mean,
totally. So Chris's links are in the chat right now, so you can reach out to her on her Facebook page. And then if you're listening to the recording right now, this is uploaded to YouTube. So below I have Chris's links. You can reach out to her anytime. And she is a certified block therapy instructor, of course. So she has a lot of experience with this. And from what I've heard, I have a lot to learn from Chris. So
well, and I am developing a program that I'm going to turn into a group, because everybody I've worked with so far is one-on-one, and I'm going to call the program Body Fluency. We're all taught how to be fluent in English. I'm trying to accomplish that one. You know, whether it's Spanish or any of these things to be fluent in, but no one taught us how to be fluent within our own body. So
I love that.
Fluency. Yeah.
Totally. That's amazing. Oh, well, again, Chris, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And so again, we're going to be here same time, same place next week with discussions with the Fascia Master. So it's every Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to be notified as we upload more of these discussions. So we will see all of you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See you all. Bye.